Hello Stampers, this is Yana Smakula for My Favorite Things. Welcome back for another video tutorial. All supplies I'm using for this project are listed and linked in the video description below for your convenience. In this video, I'm sharing a bold Valentine's Day card created with a Love You No Matter What stamp set. This set features 4 adorable gnomes all running with some sort of Valentine's Day gift. Either a heart-shaped balloon, a Cupid-style bow and arrow, or a bag filled with the mini hearts. I wanted to feature 3 out of the 4 gnomes on my card, so I stamped the 3 that I picked in alcohol marker-friendly ink onto white cardstock. I also stamped the arrow and a cloud of the mini hearts. And this is cuteness overload, if you ask me. Of course, I used my Mini Misty stamping tool to help me during the stamping process. Now, since these are all outline images, I pulled out my Copic markers and did very quick coloring using a combination of 3 markers for each color. I started with the pinks by using RV04, RV02, and RV00. I'm experimenting with the new Copic marker color combos, and I'm trying to use new to me colors. Now, my color combo for these gnomes is pink, green, and blue. And I use the lightest shade of Copic markers that I have in my stash to do this type of coloring. These gnomes are so small, there's not much room for blending, but there's still enough room to add just a touch of color and make the gnomes as colorful as you want. The greens that I use are YG03, YG01, and YG00. The blues are B02, B00, and B000. So you can see super light, super pale colors. I also used W1 to add shading to their beards, although you can barely see that. And finally, I used E02, E00, and E000. These are nice skin colors, and I used those to color their noses and their arms. There are coordinating dies available for these cuties, and I got mine in my platinum die cutting machine, and look how adorable these are. And I love that the dies cut out even the tiniest details in these images. Next, I wanted to create a bold and colorful background for this card. The coloring on the gnomes is pretty subtle. It's almost pastel, not too bright. I wanted the finished card to be quite bright and bold. And to achieve that, I decided to use colored cardstock to create a simple geometric background. This is super easy to do, and all you need is just 3 colors of cardstock. So here I have a yellow, a light and a dark pink panel, and a paper trimmer. I used a yellow panel as my base. It is cut to 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, so I did not trim it any further. The other panels were cut to the same size to begin with, but you can also use leftovers from your stash as we are trimming these down. Now, I visualize the cut that I want to make, and I just trim it using my paper trimmer. There's no measuring. I don't need this to be precise or perfect. I am just creating cuts at an odd diagonal angle. And then for the pink panel, I'm making a few marks with a pencil just so that it is better aligned with a hot pink panel. And again, I cut it using my paper trimmer. There is really no right or wrong way to do it. You cut it at any angle that you want, and you have yourself a bold geometric background. Next, I used glue and I adhered the panels onto my yellow background. Using glue gives me time to move and wiggle the panels a little bit and adjust placement if I need to so that everything is aligned nicely. And next, I just trim the excess off and my bold and colorful panel is ready. Super easy. I have an A2 card base here, and I'm just going to adhere this colorful panel on top of the card base, and this is going to make the front of my card. Now, I wanted to do something different for this project in terms of sentiment, and instead of picking one sentiment, because that's what we usually do, we just typically pick one sentiment for a card, I used 3 sentiments from this stamp set. I heat embossed 2 longer sentiments in white embossing powder on black cardstock, and I stamped 1 sentiment in black ink onto white cardstock, the shorter sentiment. I cut all of these sentiment to skinny strips, and I added a strip of fun foam from the back of each to add dimension. And my fun foam was cut just a little bit smaller so that it didn't show from the sides. I've been loving the wonky sentiment placement lately. That makes it so much easier to not mess up a card. So I just adhered each of the sentiments slightly skewed onto the background. Now what this does, it adds movement and playfulness to my card. Next, I foam mounted each of the gnomes above the sentiments, starting with the one holding the heart balloon in the center. He is the tallest, so I wanted him placed in the center of the card. I also added the Cupid one to the right, along with an arrow about to pop the balloon, and then the last gnome to the left. I also sprinkled the tiny hearts around all of the gnomes. Now I die cut the same heart shapes from white fun foam, and to add dimension, I adhered my colored hearts onto the fun foam hearts to pop them up on the card. These hearts are so tiny, it would have been impossible for me to use foam squares. So instead, I just die cut identical shapes from white fun foam. I didn't want to add any other embellishments here, just those adorable, teeny, tiny hearts. And that finished my card. I hope you feel inspired to create and will give this idea a try. Have fun crafting, love you guys, and I'll see you next time.